Hi, everyone. Good morning. You are here for the Goodman Speakers webinar. You are in the right place. If you were looking for something else, stay and hang out with us. You're hoping for something completely different. Let's see. Good morning, Andrea. Feel free to throw questions into the chat throughout the presentation. I'll ask at the end. So if there's something that you're just dying to ask, you don't want to forget to have Princess Sarah answer, just go ahead and throw it right in the chat. And I will get started pretty much right at, 11:01, get started. Just let everybody come in. Like I said, they know me by now. I'm never early. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. I'm excited to be here from cold Massachusetts with all of you and from wherever you are, and with our special guest, Princess Sarah Culberson. And this will also be recorded, and we will send it out as well to the registration list, so that if someone was registered for it and then had something else come up, they still get to be a part of the conversation. So welcome everyone who is joining, who's here with us. I'm thrilled that you could be here. I am Jenna George, president of Goodman Speakers, and I am so excited about today's guest, Princess Sarah Culberson. She is a biracial adopted woman who discovered that she was a princess. It's, the American dream. I mean, what a crazy story. I'm so excited. She's going to get into everything. She's going to tell us all how all of this came to be, how a biracial adopted woman becomes a princess and discovers that she has been a princess all along. Amazing. And at the end, we will do some Q&A. As I mentioned before, go ahead and throw those questions into the chat throughout the presentation. I'll ask them at the end, or you'll have the opportunity to ask some questions through the chat at the end. So thank you so much for joining us, and welcome, Princess Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Let me go ahead. Can you allow me to share my screen? I think you just make me a co-host, and then I can share it.
You should be good now.
Fantastic. Perfect. There we go. Now I can share everything. I'll move it down a little bit. Wonderful. I'm excited to be with all of you and share with you a little bit about my background. I'm going to take you on a journey this morning from West Virginia to West Africa. And this is one of my presentations. I do many different presentations, but this is the one I thought I'd share with you all today. So we're going to go back to when I was first adopted. We're going to go on a little journey. So I was adopted when I was 1 year old into a whole new family with Dr. Jim and Judy Culberson. As you can see, my dad is sitting there looking like a fabulous hippie. And this is my first day I arrived home. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared. And I'm kind of like, who is this man? And I was adopted into this loving all-white family in West Virginia. And the first day I came home, my sister yelled to all the neighborhood girls. It was so funny. Both of my sisters. So my sister Lynn, dark hair, she's 11 with these big glasses, and Laura, blonde hair, green eyes, she was 10. So my sisters both yelled to all the neighborhood girls, come here, you gotta see my new little baby sister, Sarah. You gotta see my new little baby sister, Sarah. So all the neighborhood girls come running and they sit in this big circle. And Catherine Morgan is looking at me and all the girls are chatting and I get to sit with the big girls, right? And Catherine Morgan looks over at me and she looks at my sister and she says, now, is she Black or does she just have a really good tan? So this is Morgantown, West Virginia, 3% African-American. And in this community, they hadn't seen very many kids of color. And my sister Lynn, who's 11, said, this is my new little baby sister, Sarah. She's part West African and part white American. And the girls were like, oh, okay. So I was getting to know the kids in the neighborhood, getting to know my family, and it was a lot of fun. Now, something interesting happened. When I was first adopted, my mom called my grandmother to tell her that I had been adopted. And the call went a little bit like this. Mom, we adopted this new little girl. Her name's Sarah. She's got all this curly hair. I can't wait till we come home this summer to see you. Hello, Mom? And then there was silence on the other end of the line. And my grandmother said, Judy, I think adopting this Black little girl into our family is only going to cause problems, and I don't want to talk to you about it. Click. And she hung up on my mom. Now, my mom, being the super duper human that she always was, she was always about 5'2", maybe just about 100 pounds, tiny but mighty. She said, you know what? We're going to go home to our hometown, Litchfield, Illinois, 2,000 people in the town, like we always do, and we're going to see our family. So everyone got in the car because my mom didn't like flying. Mom, Dad, Lynn, Laura, Benji, the dog, we had a poodle, and we drove 12 hours to Illinois, and we drive up the windy road to the farmhouse. And my mom grew up on this beautiful big farm. And my grandmother comes out of the farmhouse, and the door kind of screeches open. And she looks at me. She looks away. Then she looks back at me and she says, can I hold her? And in that moment, my mom said I was breaking racial barriers within my own family. So I was getting to know my fabulous family. And as you can see, this very fun 70s going into the 80s photo. I was getting to know my family. I got to feed the chickens on the farm with my grandma, and my grandpa drove a dairy truck. And so I got ice cream all the time. It was so much fun to spend time on the farm. And as you can see from this fabulous photo, my mom got a perm. I think she wanted to have an afro like me secretly. And my sisters, they're like, Sarah, really? Do you show this photo? We have like bowl cuts, but I love it. Those are my sisters, Lynn and Laura, and my amazing dad. So I grew up in this incredible family, getting to know everyone, and as I was growing up, I didn't look like, as you can see, anybody in my family, and I didn't look like a lot of people in the community that I was growing up in West Virginia. And so name it, I did it. I was always trying to fit in and trying to be the best. So I was a track star, a basketball star, homecoming queen, full scholarship to college. And then I went to one of the top graduate schools for theater and classical theater and dance. Now, I'm not sharing all that to go, wow, look at me. I'm sharing that because sometimes when you don't look like everybody else in the room, you try to do more and overachieve so you make sure you're accepted. So it's something interesting to think about for people sometimes. And that's exactly what I was doing. So when I moved to Los Angeles after graduate school, I moved to Los Angeles and I started doing TV and film. And as I was in Los Angeles, I wanted to know more about my birth family and my biological roots and who do I look like? And all these questions started coming up. And my friend who worked for Microsoft, he was this incredible software engineer, did this amazing program called Landmark Worldwide. And he started his own company and started doing all these incredible projects. And I said, wait, I want to do this because maybe this will advance my acting career. So I went and did the course. But what I realized is something much more beautiful and deeper showed up. I realized that I needed to get things complete with my birth family. I realized that I was really angry at my birth father. I thought, well, you were with a white woman in the 70s going into the 80s. Where were you? Why weren't you around? And I had all these stories that I made up, but I really didn't know any information. So I was sitting in the class and they said, tell the person sitting next to you where you're holding back in your life. And my friend Art was sitting next to me and I said, I'm terrified to find my birth father. And honestly, I'm really, really afraid of being rejected. And I realized in this course, well, what was it like to be an African man, 19 years old, in the United States, meeting a white woman, and then surprisingly, she gets pregnant? You know, maybe I should give this guy a break. And the moment I let go of that anger, this whole new world opened up. And then I realized I would really like to meet my birth father, but what if he doesn't want to meet me? So back to the class, I said, tell the person sitting next to you where you're holding back in your life. And I said, Art, I really want to find my birth father, but I'm so afraid of being rejected. And he said, listen, I know a private investigator. He won't charge you more than $100, Sarah, and your birth father is going to love you. And I said, all the fear came back up. And I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, it's going to be great. So I contact this private investigator, 3 hours, all the information I need for $25. No joke. I write a letter to Marilyn because he said, don't call. Birth families freak out and hang up. Just write a letter and let them be with the letter and then let them call you. 4 days later, I get a phone call and there's this woman on the other line. And she says, hello, Sarah. This is Evelyn. How are you? And I thought, is this a Jamaican woman I met the other day? Because I couldn't get the dialect and I wasn't expecting to hear from anyone so soon. She said, I'm your auntie. We received your letter. And I started to bawl. I said, thank you so much for calling. I didn't know if I would ever see you. I didn't know if I would ever meet you. She said, Sarah, I was there when you were born. I used to take care of you when your mother would go to the grocery store. She said, hold on, let me get your uncle on the phone. And then my uncle gets on the phone and he's so funny. He says, oh, Sarah, we are so happy you've been found. Do you know who you are? And I'm thinking, I'm Sarah. He says, you are part of a royal family. Your great-grandfather was a paramount chief in Sierra Leone. Your grandfather was a paramount chief. Your grandfather was knighted Justice of the Peace by the Queen of England. You can be chief someday. Our family runs a chiefdom of 70,000 people. You are a princess in this country. I was thinking, what? This is not at all what I expected. I thought, maybe I'll see a picture. I had found my birth mother's family and I saw that my birth mother and I had the same crooked tooth. Unfortunately, she had passed away of cancer. So I got to hear stories and see pictures, which is what I thought this would be, but it wasn't. They said, you are a princess. They said, we're going to contact your father in Sierra Leone. He's going to be so happy to meet you. Well, all the fears started coming back up again. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, does he really want to meet me? So during the 2 weeks that they have to get a message from village to village to village to my birth father, because this is 2003 and a lot of people don't have cell phones in Sierra Leone at that time. So I start getting phone calls from all of these different African family members who live in the United States. Hello, Sarah. I'm your Uncle Ali, your father's favorite uncle. Hello, Sarah. I'm your Auntie Jenny. They used to call your father and be twins when we were little. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Sarah. All of these different African family members are calling me, welcoming me to the family. When I had told myself they're not going to want to meet me, they're not going to want to talk to me, I was so nervous. And it was this beautiful homecoming. And then after the 2 weeks go by and they get the message to my father, I hear my birth father's voice for the first time and he calls. And the first thing he says, Sarah, please forgive me. I didn't know how to find you after you've been placed in adoption. Your name had changed. Everything had changed. And I said, no. Please forgive me because I've been making you wrong my entire life just to protect myself. And I'm not going to do that anymore. And he said, okay. He said, I wanted your mother and I wanted you to be placed in a family that could really take good care of you. And I was young, I was in college. I knew I couldn't do that. And I said, listen, if there's a day that goes by that you feel guilty, please don't. You gave me the best family in the world. And now I'm going to get to meet you too. So I'm so excited to do this. And I said, how do we do this? He said, it's challenging for me to get a visa to come to the United States. Could you come here? And I said, I would love to. So I flew to Maryland to meet all the African family members, the ones, hello, Sarah, hello, Sarah, hello, Sarah. And we planned a trip for 6 months later to go to Sierra Leone. And I get off the airplane and this afro that you see becomes more like the afro in the picture of me as a baby. It just got huge because the humidity, if any of you've been to West Africa, I mean, the humidity is a whole nother ballgame. And I get out of the airplane, see my birth father, and he's so nervous. And it's as if his eyes were saying, please like me, please accept me, please like me. And when I went into the airport, I gave him a big hug and I said, it's so good to finally meet you. And he said, it's so good to finally meet you too. And my Aunt Amy was standing there, the chief's wife, and she said, turn around, girl, let me look at you. So I turned around and I got to meet this incredible family. We took a ferry over to Freetown, which is the capital of Sierra Leone, spent the night in a small hotel because the next day we were going to our family's village. So there was a knock at the door, and my father was at the door. And I opened the door, and he had this beautiful green African dress and a matching green shirt for him. And he said, Zeta, I would love for you to wear this green African dress into our family's village. And I said, I would love to. So I get this beautiful green African dress, and we get in the car and we drive on what I call the Indiana Jones bumpy roads to Boompay, to my family's village. And we're in this car for about 6 hours to get to Boompay. And as we arrive, there are 100, 200, all these hundreds of people start gathering around the car, and almost like choreography, because I'm also a dancer, everyone parts, and all the women of the village come forward wearing the same green dress that I had been given that morning. And they were singing, "Pada-tang, tang, tang, pada-tang, tang, tang, pada-do-a-do, way, pura Sarah go to." They were singing, "We're preparing for Sarah." I was literally pinching myself. And I got to meet my brother Hindobe, my sister Jeneba, this whole family. But I also got to see what happened after an 11-year civil war that happened, because I was there 2 years after the Blood Diamond War had ended. So I want to give you a chance to kind of see this little bit of a homecoming and this new culture that I got to immerse myself in Sierra Leone, and also give you a chance to see what happened after this civil war in Sierra Leone.
I feel like I'm in a dream. We are just kilometers away from my father's village of Boompay, and my emotions are all over the place as I anticipate reaching my family's village.
We're not seeing the
Little did I
video.
know.
Oh, you're not seeing the video?
Mm-mm.
Oh,
Nope.
no.
So I wanted to just pause and have you start over if you don't mind.
No problem. Let me go back. That's strange. Let me go back. How about this? Let me see. You saw everything else, yes?
Yep. I'm seeing 2 slides at a time though. So maybe click onto just the one. Oh, okay.
Okay. How
And
about,
now try the video.
there
Let's
we
see.
go.
It's still black. Oh, yeah, that's better. Yep. Good.
Yay, thank you.
I feel like I'm in a dream. We are just kilometers away from my father's village of Boompay, and my emotions are all over the place as I anticipate reaching my family's village. Little did I know my green African dress, a cherished gift from my father, would play such a big role in my arrival, my homecoming. A celebration of traditional dance and song went on into the night. Speeches were made by the chief and elders of the tribe, stating that I could be their chief someday. It was amazing, overwhelming, really.
So as I was in Sierra Leone, I started to see what happened after this 11-year civil war. I saw people with missing arms, missing legs. It was it was such a beautiful, wonderful excitement and homecoming, but I also got to see what happened after this 11-year Blood Diamond War. And I love this quote about integrity: choosing courage over comfort, choosing what is right over what is fun, fast, or easy, and choosing to practice our values rather than simply professing them. So as I was in Sierra Leone and seeing what happened, I realized I could go back to my life in Los Angeles doing TV and film, no problem, and act as if I didn't see this. Now, I couldn't personally do that, but I could. It was a possibility of a choice. And that's something that sometimes happens inside of when we talk about diversity and inclusion work. We can choose to delve into it and look at it. And some of us can choose not to actually deal with it because sometimes we don't have to. So one of the things when being in Sierra Leone that I realized is I had to really show up. I really wanted to look at what's happening in this country. So showing up, listening with intent, and not just showing up to say, because when I saw what happened, my American mind was like, okay, maybe we should start with the school and start with education. And I thought I knew maybe what should be done. But what I really realized was I really needed to listen with intent and understand from the community what's needed. I took my parents with me at one point and we to Sierra Leone, who adopted me, and we listened together about the needs in the community. And we started a nonprofit. And we started also listening from compassion and walking in their shoes. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion work, sometimes it's hard to walk in people's shoes when you haven't had that experience. So for me, coming to a whole new culture, Sierra Leone, this is my birth family. I had to learn how to walk in their shoes and learn about their experiences, learn what they had been through after a Blood Diamond War. I have no idea what it's like to run and hide through a war. I have no clue, but I had to learn. And then also one of the things that I learned is how to really listen and recreate and reiterate what they're telling me. Because I know sometimes, I don't know about all of you, but sometimes I like to just share what I think an answer is and not really listen, not really take it in and really hear what people might be trying to communicate. And so I had to really listen to what they were saying in our family's chiefdom and really listen and be of support. And then one of the other things that I learned, and it's so incredible because I've done diversity, equity, and inclusion work for over 10 years now, but it was also going to Sierra Leone and being immersed in this culture where I learned some of the deepest diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So sitting down with our family's chiefdom, it was really incredible because I got to start looking at how they run things. How do we work together? And what they started to do is they made sure when they get together at a big table and everyone has a voice and they create a comfortable space so people can actually share their ideas, how they're feeling. And they also have to make sure that there's a diverse amount of people around the table. So in our family's chiefdom, we have a lot of doctors, we have lawyers, we have people from all walks of life. My brother's an attorney in Sierra Leone. However, we realize that we need to have the women at the table because often it's just men. Actually, in Sierra Leone, the men run a lot of things. So I suggested we need to have some of the women at the table speaking, and that's something that we also do. We also need to have children. Children have voices in this community. Let's make sure they're speaking too. There's a huge amputee community. Their part, we need to know what people from that community actually need. There are also people who might be illiterate, but they speak the Mende language and English beautifully. We need them part of this community and this conversation as well, because it's not just about certain groups of people being at the table, but it's really like, how do we include everyone? So they really taught me about the importance of having so many different voices sitting at the table, because not only does it elevate our chiefdom when we know what's needed, but inside of your companies and corporations, when you have so many different people sitting at the table, you really have, your company can be elevated. And sometimes when we're doing those having those conversations of diversity and inclusion, sometimes it's uncomfortable. John Donovan, the former a former CEO actually at AT&T, I was speaking in New Orleans, and he and I were talking, and he said, you know I'm in the right place when I'm uncomfortable. And I have to say, in our family's chiefdom, as we all sat there and we get feedback from different folks from the community, sometimes it is uncomfortable. And I think inside of diversity and inclusion work, there is feedback, there are people's experiences, there's work that maybe you've never experienced or I've never experienced that is uncomfortable. And when it is uncomfortable, you are in the perfect right place. That's part of the journey of the work. And one of the other things is to don't stop having the conversations. I think that's something that's really, really important to remember, is to don't stop having these conversations that are so important, because it's easy for me. It was very easy for me. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go back to my life in Los Angeles, do TV and film, and hopefully they'll work it out after the war. This royal family, they'll figure it out. And I could have done that. It's sometimes easier to do that. That's actually a privilege that I had, to actually not participate in what's happening. But what I've learned is that really, if we want to make a bigger difference in the community that we're in, it is work. It is uncomfortable. And that's okay. That's part of the journey with all of the work. So that's one of the things that I really had to learn. And I also had to realize that I had to not get uncomfortable with the conversation so much that we stopped having it. Okay, this is uncomfortable. Let's move on to the next thing. Because when you really allow yourselves to create a safe space within your community that all different voices can share, and the diversity is also there, there's a whole nother level of what's possible that can take your company to new levels, and that can actually impact the community that you're sourcing, who it could be a sales team, it could be a whole group outside of your company, but it really contributes to the people you're serving. And I've learned that through our family's chiefdom. When we listen to everybody at the table, because we don't just work on our chiefdom of 70,000, we also work with the president of the country. So we're our own company in a way, our own chiefdom. And we've learned how to really work powerfully together. So I'm going to go on. I know there are 2 slides, but I'm going to go on to this next slide. Let's make change together. Can we get comfortable being uncomfortable? And that's something that I think is so powerful in this journey. Can we get comfortable being uncomfortable? So inside of that, I had to relearn who I was. And I had to educate myself on Sierra Leone. And how can I help? I'm only one person. How do I have these tough conversations with my family? So this is all connected to diversity and inclusion work inside of companies. Each one of us, when we do DEI work, we have to kind of relearn who we are individually, our own experiences, because we all have different backgrounds, different racial identities, different ethnicities, different religions. And it's kind of looking at, who are we inside of this whole company? What's our role here? What do we bring to the table? And educate ourselves on each other. Like, I needed to learn about Sierra Leone, but if we learn about each other, that makes us even closer and create more camaraderie in a closer organization. And this is part of DEI work. And then for myself, I had to look at, why do I have to have these tough conversations with my family? Well, that's inside of DEI work. There are tough conversations that are to be had inside of the company. And that's inside of, how do we do this? And isn't it easier, right? Isn't it easier just to not say anything, to stay silent on some of these topics? Because I tell you what, when I was in Sierra Leone, there were many times that I did not want to deal with or work with the chiefdom inside of some of these huge conversations that we were having. I have to say, when we dealt with the Ebola crisis several years ago, I was ready to go, this is too much. And now what's so interesting is now we're dealing with COVID. So it's amazing sometimes when we do the hard work now, right? We've been given this time for whatever reason we're in this COVID world. And I feel like all of these movements have come to the surface that have happened over the last many months. And I think it's also a way for all of us to connect and do the work now. So we're more prepared for the future. So we can actually bring new levels to what's possible within ourselves, our families, and our companies, and the greater people that we're serving. So it is really about doing this work at all different levels now. And I think it's really a powerful and important time. And then the last one is, isn't it somebody else's responsibility? Like, can't somebody else do this? Which is exactly how I was feeling sometimes in Sierra Leone. This is a lot. Do I really want to do all this work? And yes, you do, because it really does make a huge impact. So thinking about different questions that we could look at, right? How can you walk in other people's shoes when we put on this DEI hat, right? How can we walk in other people's shoes? How can we let other people be heard, making sure that everyone's voice is heard? How can we reiterate back to them what they said, not just jumping in with, oh, this is what I think, but actually listening, letting each other's experiences and creating a safe space for people's experiences to be heard. I mean, that's also part of the work. It might seem simple, but it really creates a safe space to do any kind of diversity and inclusion work. And then, how can I show up with compassion? Even though we all might have different experiences, how can we give compassion to each other for our own experiences and for what we bring to the table? And this is one that's always tough for me, I have to say. Don't make them wrong, even if you think they are. I have to say, sometimes for myself, it's so easy to go, you know what? I really want to make this person wrong, because we get frustrated. We have our ideas of how things should be, but that actually kind of kills off their opinion or their experience. And I've had to learn for myself to really be a listener, and the importance of listening and understanding someone's experience. And then when they contribute, I actually can do something with that if I really listen. And how can we be vulnerable enough to share how we feel? And that's coming from the top also. If the leaders in corporations allow themselves to be vulnerable, that actually really makes a difference inside of diversity and inclusion work. You get to hear each other. You get to have conversations together. Maybe you're doing a book club together. Maybe you're actually having conversations within business resource groups and hearing what each different business resource group may have to say from a different ethnic background that can actually serve your corporation to lift it to a new level. That's where we are right now. And the last slide here, it says, what type of person will you be when this is over? And the question is, when this is over, meaning this COVID time, because we've been given this time for whatever reason to deal with the world right now that is very challenging, and people have lost people, right? However, there is a time, this is a time, I think, for us to, have an opportunity to be even more prepared for what's next within your company, within this world that we're living in. We have to innovate. We have to be more creative. And doing this diversity and inclusion work will literally take you to a new level. So I'm really excited to be with all of you. And I'm going to stop here and see if you have any questions about anything.
I do.
Okay, yes. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here.
Oh, amazing. Your story is incredible and so timely. So I think what's immediately coming to forefront for me is, we've had for years, we've had requests for diversity and inclusion speakers. And a lot of times I feel like that more meant a variety of gender and race on the stage. Now it's on the screen, but on stage or on screen, being able to really talk about diversity and inclusion. You've done diversity and inclusion work prior to this, but also now experiencing it for yourself on so many levels. I mean, why do you think that shift has taken place? You talk about being uncomfortable, and I think it's a beautiful thing that we now are really talking about diversity and inclusion instead of just, featuring diverse speakers. But why do you think that shift we've made that shift or that turn, and why do you find that that's important?
I think that there are so many more diverse folks in our world. And we actually, I'm thinking about America specifically, and how are we serving those people? And if we have all these different folks and different companies working, if we're not hearing those voices, how are we going to be able to serve the masses? I think it's happening because it's time. It's been time. And we've needed to come together as a group so we can work together and move forward. And I think there's been a disconnect as to how people experience the world. And some people think, well, that doesn't happen. And it actually does, but for certain people it does. And so if we're trying to promote a product that only serves a certain amount of people, that's not going to go very far. I've spoken to Capital One and Prudential and all these different companies, and it's like, how do we take our company to a new level? Well, we've got to have different voices at the table to really know how to serve the people as a whole. And I think it's time to come together. And I think that's why this is happening.
Yep. Yeah. And when you talked about walking in someone else's shoes, I think we all need to try to do that and think about step outside of our shoes and try to be in someone else's shoes to understand that, whether it's internally or on a client side, consumer facing. Everyone that's with us today, please feel free to throw some questions into the chat and we'll get those asked and answered with Princess Sarah. I had another one. Because you've experienced this firsthand, being at a table, coming to a table at your chiefdom where women were not, did you have anyone, and I know your fear of being rejected by your father obviously was completely the opposite. You were embraced, and that's so wonderful. But did you have anyone in the chiefdom that rejected you due to maybe just old school ways, or this isn't right, she's a female, or that you were an outsider and now you were an insider? Did you have anyone who was objecting to you being at the table or bringing new ideas, even though you were just trying to help?
No, actually, kind of interesting. I didn't have any, and I think maybe because of who my family is within the chiefdom, and that's a privilege within itself, right? I'm a woman coming from America who has a family who runs a chiefdom, so I can sit down at the table and have conversations that maybe another woman in the community might not be able to have in the same way. That's something that we're working on, making sure that people have their voices be heard. But they were often very interested about what I had to say. And that's what was so interesting, because one day I was sitting there and I was literally with the chief and all these men, and we were having a conversation, and all of a sudden I went, I am the only woman at this table. And I thought, and then I looked to the other women and I motioned for them to come over, and they're like, oh, no, that's okay. And culturally, I realized, okay, there's something happening. But I said to my father, it's so important that we have the women's voices part of this conversation as well, because they're running everything in this chiefdom and they really have so much to offer. So that's something that has shifted as well, which has been really great.
That's incredible. That's great. And I'm sure that they're appreciative for you being, even though you did maybe come to the table because of some privilege, you've opened doors for others. So I think that's incredible.
And I think there's something to be said, sorry to interrupt, but something to be said for that, because that's something else I realized. I didn't realize that I had a certain level of privilege until going to Sierra Leone. And also being raised in the wonderful, loving white family with a dad who's a neuroanatomist. That's like all this different privilege that I got to walk with. And in my mind, with that privilege, not making it wrong or feeling guilty, but actually doing something with it. What actions can I take? And I think that's something that's also very important for everyone to think about, not feeling guilty or like I have to, but what's my contribution?
Right. Okay. So you have a great book. And a little birdie told me that that book is being turned into a movie.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that? So
Sure.
excited.
Yeah, I co-wrote a book called A Princess Found. Actually, the 2 copies are back here. And Disney, right before the whole COVID shutdown, we signed on the dotted line after 6 months of negotiation, and Disney is turning it into a movie, which is so exciting. So the part of diversity and inclusion is actually part of this journey, which will be shown for masses to see all over the world, which is very exciting. And we're in development right now with it, which is really, really fun and wonderful.
So wonderful. I mean, just say Disney and it's like, oh my goodness, it's incredible. And I think Disney is doing such a great job with, showing diverse roles, but I'm so excited for you. And that's going to be animated or live action, or do you know yet?
That's actually going to be live action, but separate from my story. So that's based on the book, which is a memoir, but separate from my story, we also have an animation that we're working on with Randy Jackson, from the back, what's the original show he was on? I'm going blank.
American Idol.
Thank you, right? American Idol. And now
it's a no for me, dog. Yep.
And now he's on Name That Tune. So we're working with him and another company, and we're doing an animation that's all about teaching children about cultures around the world. So it's actually, these are different ways of sharing about culture, DEI work through different areas that hit on kids and adults. So it's pretty awesome. We're excited.
Very cool. I think anything with kids and diversity is great. And when you mentioned kids, your sisters, which how cool. I mean, they experience diversity and inclusion at such a young age, and that's a blessing for them. Have they been to Sierra Leone? Have your parents, has any of your family been over there to also experience that with you?
Yes, my parents have been. My sisters haven't been yet, but my parents both went with me, and they actually run our nonprofit Sierra Leone Rising with me, doing work in public health, education, and female empowerment. So we've all done that for the past 15 years together. And my dad Jim, and my birth father Joe worked together to dig 9 wells with Rotary to serve 12,000 people with clean drinking water. So it's kind of cool how everyone's come together.
Unbelievable. Only 12,000 people with clean drinking water. That's all. No big deal. Just slip that in there. Unbelievable. That's incredible. Does anybody have any questions for Princess Sarah before I let her go? Your story is incredible. Everything that you're doing is wonderful. I'm so excited, for this story to be shared with the masses. I'm thrilled to just have you in our little corner of the world. Your message is so timely right now, and it needs to be heard. I think it's just important right now that we're talking about this, and that it's like we're talking about it. Like I said, it's not just about having a diverse speaker. It's not just having a woman, but it's about really talking about it and saying, everyone should have a voice, and it makes us all better. So I'm just thrilled that you were able to spend the morning with us. Let's see.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with all of you. I wish I could see everyone's face, but I know.
I know. That's the downside. I think we've got to start doing some more meeting style so you can see people's faces, and they're sending love through the chat. Excited for the film. Great story. Thanks for sharing. I'm so glad everyone was able to join with us. We are thrilled to always have you. I'm so excited that we were able to have you, Princess Sarah, with us today. You are a joy, and I'm really, really excited for you and all the amazing things coming your way after you've brought so much light to so many. So
somebody said something.
Needed to hear you say we need to have difficult conversations today. Yeah, it's so important. Thank you for saying that. And I think especially speaking from experience, because you've done that and you've, in a whole different, something that we could never fathom. I'm a princess, and now I'm going to have some, difficult conversations with, your chiefdom. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Everyone have a wonderful day. Princess Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more from Princess Sarah. Lots of exciting things coming.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great day. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.